Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. Have you ever been in a situation where you just did not have that much left over? I mean, there's a saying there's more month than there is money. I, especially when I was in minimum wage jobs, was so embarrassed. Like, why am I struggling, right? And then I would read articles like this where it was like, oh, the average American can't cover a $400 emergency expense. And the sad part is that I'd actually feel better reading this knowing that I wasn't the only one like this. And what's funny is that now that I've made more money, nobody ever reaches out to me and say like, hey, how do you do this, like, what is this thing called velocity banking? In my real life, nobody ever reaches out. So I just assumed that everyone's doing well, and probably what's happening is that most people are suffering in silence, right, including your average landlord, right? And I know I went over this in other videos, but did you know that good cash flow for a rental property is only $200 a month? Like, that's good. So what do you think average is, right? So if you're dealing with small cash flow issues, very, very small, to the point where your girlfriend or significant other might laugh at you, why is it so small? Because you thought it'd be bigger when you saw all those YouTube and TikTok videos about how big it would be. Don't be embarrassed because it happens to a lot of people, right? So here's the thing. In order for our cash flow to grow, we have to pay off debt, right? Because debt is the ultimate killer of cash flow. In fact, I took a class in Renatus. It was called Real Estate Red Flags. And one of the things that the teacher, Chris Albin, taught was that cash flow doesn't exist in rental properties if you have debt. That was one of the most shocking things I learned, because in Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's like, yo, just borrow all the money and you'll somehow cash flow. And he was, because Chris isn't as famous as Robert Kiyosaki, I was like, I want to believe Robert Kiyosaki because he makes it seem like it'd be so easy and you can borrow all the money in the world. But a lot of people struggle with that because of debt, and that's what we're going to learn how to do today, which is eliminate debt with that thing that we always love to review, which is velocity banking. Right, so let's go ahead and review it. So we'll just assume that we make actually pretty good income. Maybe it's a two-person household where two people make 50,000 each, and then 100,000 is usually about $6,000 a month, I think, after taxes, and then we have expenses and $383 of savings left over. Now, here's the thing, right? We have two credit cards, a student loan, an auto loan, a personal mortgage, and an investment mortgage. Okay, and look at the interest rate on the investment mortgage. Almost always going to be higher than the personal mortgage, because the way that lenders and banks see it is that if crap hits the fan, part of my language, you're always going to take care of your personal home first before your investment home, right? Because you live there, so it's less of a risk. So when you see this, right, you see that you're kind of well, I don't want to say you're struggling because I haven't included the tenant's income here, but if the tenant were not to pay, right? Let's say the tenant weren't going to pay, you'd only have $383 of savings left over. And that's a position that we don't necessarily want to be in. And this is my personal opinion, that when we do landlording, we want to do it from a position of strength, and we want to do it in a position that if the tenant doesn't pay, we're comfortable kicking them out, kicking them to the curb, and getting a new tenant that will pay, right? But the most important part is that you have to screen the tenant and make sure that they're a paying tenant, right? So screening, and there was a saying that, or phrase that I heard, that no tenant is better than a bad tenant. So we don't want to be at a point where like they're not paying, and then like that, because we don't have the finances to cover our bills, we're struggling, right? Lots of landlords like that, and that's why if you look on the internet, tired landlords, so common, so common. So let's do this. Let's say, hey, for the time being, we're not going to invest in a rental property. That's for later, once we paid off all of our personal debts, and then we're going to be a position of strength to be a landlord. So what we're going to do is let's focus on paying off some of our personal debts up to the mortgage, and then once the mortgage is still there, well, that's when we'll go into investing in rental properties. Okay, so let's do it using something called velocity banking. So what is velocity banking? All it is a debt payoff strategy using a line of credit as your main operating account, right? And so there's only two requirements for it. Number one is the budget, right? The budget, and then number two is the line of credit as your main operating account. And what is a line of credit? All it is a financial tool where you could borrow money, pay back, and then use it over and over again. There's different types of lines of credit. There's personal, there's home equity, there's business, right? Personal, business, home equity are almost all the same. Personal is just attached to your name. Business is attached to your business, and home equity is actually attached to your home, right? So it's kind of like personal, but you're offering your home equity as collateral. And the cool thing about the personal line of credit is that, or home equity or whatever, unlike a credit card, even though technically it's a line of credit, is that you can use it to pay for anything, right? Like I could even use the line of credit to pay for the line of credit's bills. It's that flexible and easy. And we're going to assume that we have access to, I don't know, a $50,000 home equity line of credit. Now, here's the secret, right? About getting lines of credit. Most people think about getting it when they need the money, and banks don't lend money to people who need it. You have to understand this. They don't lend money to people who need it. And so if you try to get money when you need it, it's going to be a very hard time. Although I do know one notable exception to this, but let's kind of build our financial foundation um, from the start instead of trying to look for exceptions, right? So again, I have over $287,000 in lines of credit, and that probably will be like 500,000, like probably end of next month or in 2 weeks or something like that. Once I get approved for a first lien HELOC, home equity line of credit. But let's assume we have access to a $50,000 home equity line of credit. Think of it as like a $50,000 credit card, right? And with Velocity Banking, we assume two things. Number one, same income. Okay, same income. But number two, we're going to do the exact opposite of what Dave Ramsey teaches us. Exact opposite, which is we're not going to save $1,000. We're not going to do it until we have paid off debt. We don't need to have reserves because our reserves are technically our line of credit, right? So whenever you have available in the line of credit, you could just pull it out if you need an extra 100, 200, $5,000 emergency, okay? And then what we're going to do is say, hey, we're going to have the same expenses. Let's go ahead and copy these right here. And then instead of savings, we're going to have something called cash flow, which is almost like savings, right? But when we make our line of credit as our main operating account, which is step two, make our line of credit as our main operating account, we're going to try to increase this number if we can. And then the actual strategy itself is the entire paycheck, right, goes into the line of credit, and then our expenses come out of the line of credit, right? And then after every single month, the balance would go down by our cash flow. Now, let's go ahead and increase it, okay? So let's do the most obvious no-brainer, which is moving these high interest rate credit cards into that line of credit. So we got 15 grand of credit cards. So what we do is we move the balance of these credit cards here, okay? And then guess what? This comes to zero and this comes to zero. So we went from 1,800 to 2,300 in one swoop without making more money. How do we do that? Just by simply making our line of credit as our main operating account, right? And then after every single month, the balance is going to go down about 2,300. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and calculate the next month, which is the previous month plus one, the next month's balance, which is, again, you're adding that entire 6,000 to the line of credit, taking our expenses out of that line of credit, 3,600, and then after every single month, it goes down by 2,300, right? So let's go ahead and get the balance, previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest minus this cash flow right here, 2355.61, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the average daily balance, right? So the average of the balances, or if you could, I'm sorry, the average function is a way to estimate the average daily balance. And then you take that with this function, multiply by the interest rate, which is 0.1 right here, just 10%, and then you divide it by 12 because it's all calculated monthly, right? And as you can see here, on month one, we paid about $115, and then we just keep going, and then we just copy and paste and just do it over and over again. And we could see in 7 months, wow, it's pretty quick, right? 7 months, we paid off our personal credit cards. And again, that's because, first of all, we thought we're going to invest in rental property, but then if the tenant didn't pay, it might have been a little bit hard, right? So let's not do that yet until we get some of our personal stuff taken care of order. And now we have our student loan, auto loan, and personal mortgage. And so if we take a look here, we have our loan calculator. So our loan calculator is really cool, right? You can use Excel. They have functions here like PMT. What do you call it? Hold on, let me do this. FV, meaning like, hey, if you give, the original balance, the interest rate, and the loan term, you can easily calculate the payment amount. So if this were a 30-year loan instead of 5-year, then the payment amount would be 139, right? So things like that. And so what we're going to do is just calculate the current loan balance. And then so let me just kind of copy this right here. So in 7 months, boy, we're doing good. We paid off 15K. Look how easy that was. Oh my goodness, right? All right, and then now the student loan. Okay, so let's take a look at the student loan of how much this would be, and the auto loan and the mortgage. And so at 7 months, we just type in 7 here for the month, and then it'll tell us the current balance, right? And so we had to kind of take a look at this. So which one should we pay off? Should I focus on paying off the auto loan, student loan, and the mortgage? I mean, the student loan has the lowest balance. Why wouldn't I pay that off, right? Or maybe the auto loan because it's the highest interest rate, right? So here's what I will do. In my own case, if I had many debts, I would use something called the cash flow index formula. I've seen people with 15 debts, 20 debts, right? And it becomes a jumbled mess. But the reason why I use the cash flow index formula, which is right here, all it is balance divided by the payment, is it gives you an easy way to figure out which debts to pay off, right? So it's like a ranking system. The lower the number, the better. Though that's the one you want to pay off. So what do we mean by that? So even though this auto loan is right now 19 grand, if I pay it off, I get $430 of cash flow back. Whereas if I pay off this $200,000 or $197,000 mortgage, I'm only getting twice the auto loan payment. That's why I'm going to focus on this one last, right? That's what the cash flow index is saying. And so right now, I'm just going to go ahead and this is the current cash flow index of that auto loan. But just basically kind of as a summary, remember the lower the number, that's the one you want to pay off. So it's like a ranking system. So let's go ahead and pay this one off. So how do we pay this one off? So let's move this auto loan right into that line of credit. So let's go ahead, I'm going to copy and paste this right here, and you can see that it's 19 grand. So what we're going to do is move 19 grand into this home equity line of credit, 19785.25, right? And then simply by moving that payment, guess what happened? Well, with this auto loan is gone, and now we got $430 back in cash flow. So this is going to go to zero. And now look at our current cash flow. Oh my goodness, 2,700. Is that how we go from 1,800 to 2,700 literally in 7 months? I can't believe it. Okay, so now let's go ahead and modify the little formula here, right? So it's 2786.07, right? And now we got to just apply that new um, cash flow to our debts, right? And so now in 14 months, okay, 14 months, you can see that yes, we paid off that auto loan really quickly. So now it's just another 17 months. And so now what we do is 15 plus 22. So that's 37K, right? 37K. And now what we do is we just focus on the student loan, right? So student auto loan's gone. So let me just put a big fat zero right here. And now we got to focus on the student loan, and we can see the current balances by using these Excel formulas. So 1414, and then we can see, all right, well, focus on the student loan, or should I focus on the mortgage? Pretty much in every single scenario, mortgage is always last. Look at the CFI; it's the highest number, right? And the where the number is actually has some significance too. So like below 50, it means that the loan is inefficient, whereas above 100, I think, means it's efficient, meaning that if you have a really high number, that means that you have such little payment compared to the balance, right? But one of the downsides of having a highly efficient cash flow index is that if you just make the minimum payment, you're going to pay a lot of interest. That's really what that means. Okay. So what we're trying to do is make sure we do it in the right order, and then we attack the mortgage last. Okay. So let's go ahead and take this 13 grand from the student loan that's there. Okay. And then put it back here. So let's go ahead and do that. And all we got to do is now add this 13 grand here, 1361610.38. Okay. And then once we've done that, then now we got this cash flow of $159 back. So let's add it to our cash flow. And wha-bam, look at that. That's almost $3,000 of cash flow that we're going to use to pay off our debt. So let's go ahead and do that. So let me just kind of copy this right here. And we'll do this 2945.17. Okay. And then now we're going to copy this and then just apply the same formulas again. Oh my goodness, in 19 months, student loan gone. Oh, 3 loans all gone in 19 months. So now let's go ahead and do this. So 19 months and then 15 plus, no, 37 plus 15. So what's 37 plus 15? You can't do math. That's why I depend on Excel. Is $52,000. Or no, yeah, $52,000 of debt, right? And now the only debt we have left is that personal mortgage, okay? So what's the balance of that personal mortgage? This is now zero. And then at month 19, it's $194,000. Now, you could really make an argument that, hey, my mortgage is at a low interest rate. And you know what? Let's say, and actually, let me go ahead and copy this. So, mortgage one and then mortgage two, right? This one's going to be 8%. So, let me kind of put back the payment amount here, okay? So this is the actual payment for what would be an investment mortgage. But let's say the tenant doesn't pay me. Okay, so I get a rental property at $200,000 and the tenant doesn't pay me. Well, I have a $1,400 left, so I'll be okay. Rather than if we invested too early and we didn't pay off our personal debts, right? So we got to be aware of that. Now, here's the thing. Here's the secret to one of the secrets to building wealth with real estate. You got to buy it at a discount. So I'm going to show you a property that I own. So you see how I bought this at the peak of the market. This is like me copying Zillow. Zillow says it's worth about 330. Now I get you can't always trust Zillow, but here's the thing: if Zillow says my property is 330 and I bought it for 210, I'm happy. You know what I mean? Like that's enough margin of error for me to to be happy with my real estate purchase, right? So what you do is you buy it at a discount, you create wealth immediately, and then, but here's the thing, right? You still can't cash flow that much with even at $100,000 discount because what's the max rent that you can get? And that's the most important thing when it comes to understanding real estate. You got to understand your market. You got to understand your prices. What will this sell for is a completely different number for what you can rent for. So I don't know if you ever heard of the 1% rule, but in general, let's say you buy it at 300,000, then 1% of that is 3,000 and that's what you want your rent to be, right? So if the rent is only about $2,000, then 200,000 is what you want the purchase price to be, and that's what we have here essentially. Okay, so let me just kind of take a look. So 200. So let's assume that this rental property can only get about $2,000 a month, and this is actually true with my rental property. I can only get about $2,000 a month because again, the price that you get for rent is not directly correlated to the price for you would purchase at, right? So just you have to be aware of that, and that's why you have to be expert at the market, and the market prices are not rational. You know, it's like in California, why do you pay $8,000 a month for a mortgage, but the max rent you can get is $5,000? In fact, there are articles out there I pulled up before where it's like every property in Southern California is cheaper to rent than it is to own, right? So we got to be aware of that. But what I'm saying here is that we're in a position of strength now because even if the tenant doesn't pay us, we'll still be positive, okay? And let's do this calculation right here. How, okay, so when we're at this position, right, we want to focus off on paying our investment mortgage because we saw those articles about how the good cash flow is only $200, and if our rent is $2,000 and our mortgage is 1,400 and we haven't even added taxes and insurance, we're probably not cash flow. But even if we do make $200 of cash flow a month, this is not going to be bueno, and the bank is going to be the ultimate winner of this because I don't know if you know how much 8% return is for a 30-year mortgage, but it's almost 200 percent total, almost, right? 9.4% is 200%. So I'm guessing it's 175%. So you're almost paying for 2 houses. And you're wondering why your cash flow is so small, right? So the cool thing is that if we use our entirety of our income plus the tenant's income, and bring down the mortgage with our cash flow, it's so easy, and we can use it with the help of a line of credit, right? So let's say that we want to go from 200,000 to 190K, right? And then we just do what we call chunking, which is moving $10,000 into here, right? So plus $10,000, and then we just do that, right? And then so what we can do is just kind of do the same thing, income expenses out, and you see that this was paid off. Actually, we didn't properly calculate this because we have a new cash flow of only 1477, which is assuming we don't even have the tenant's income. So let me go ahead and redo this. 1477.64. And again, this is the worst case scenario, right? Worst case. Look at that. We paid that off in about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in about 7 months. And if you ever take a look at a mortgage schedule, right, and see how much principal it will take to pay off like $10,000, it's insane. And actually, let me do this. So this is a completely new mortgage. So in 7 months, how much principal is actually paid? It's $1,000. Isn't that insane? $1,000, but we paid off 10,000 in about 7 months, right? That's nuts. Now here's a cool thing. We have a velocity banking calculator to help us figure out how long it will take us to pay off this amortized loan. So let me go ahead and pull it out. So give me one moment. All right, there we are. We got our velocity banking calculator, and this is provided by Renatus, where I originally learned velocity banking from. Full disclosure, I actually resell Renatus education, and I get a commission off of it. So, do you know why I show this? So I can sell Renatus and make commission. But the cool thing is that if you ever decide to purchase Renatus, the essentials, you get access to this calculator, kind of as like a free complimentary bonus. Now, all you gotta do is just put in the loan information. So we have a $200,000 loan at $200,000 because let's say we just start investing today, right? Look at how much interest the bank would make, $328,000 on that loan, and assuming that you get $200 of good cash flow, because remember that's what Bigger Pockets says. So $200 times 12 times 30, the most you'll make is 72,000 according to Bigger Pockets, right? Now, I know people say rents go up, but again, $200 of cash flow is good. Rents go up, expenses go up, so you'll still have $200 of cash flow. Yeah, there's other things like, the tenant paying down the house, you get some appreciation, blah, 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 blah. But our focus today is on cash flow. So, again, we always want to be conservative with our numbers and hope for the best in the worst, or kind of calculate the best scenario we can get in the worst conditions, right? So that's what we want to do. All right, so now I filled it out. We have a 10% line of credit. We have our monthly income of $6,000. Again, this is assuming we don't have the tenant's income, right? This is worst case scenario. $3,000 of living expenses. So this includes our personal mortgage. And what else did it include? General expenses of 2,100. Okay, so now let's just move some of this into the line of credit and then just show what I showed in the other spreadsheet, right? So if it's 6,000, okay, look at the estimated payoff, 7.6 years, and we're assuming the tenant never paid us. Worst case scenario, right? Isn't that amazing? 7.6 years. And it takes more than 30 years for the average American to pay it off. Okay, now let's just now actually factor in the tenant's income. Okay, and then what we're going to do is assume for that rental property, even though it's highly discounted, $100,000, we only get $2,000 of rent a month. But we don't get, if we're going to factor in net expenses, or I'm sorry, net income, that means that we'll assume that 30% of the expenses go into, income goes into the expenses, maintenance, insurance, blah, 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 blah. So what we do is put in a factor of 0.7, or say 70% of the $2,000 a month income, and let's see what happens here. Bam, it cuts almost in half. So 4.6 years, we have a rental property paid off. Right? 4.6 years. And look at what happens here. We don't pay $288,000 according to this model, only about 39. I'm like blown away, right? And so now let's just keep adding it, right? And again, the chunk amount is really, it doesn't make a difference just as long as it's a small amount. But let's go ahead and once we paid off that rental property, just do it in one more time, all right? So let's get another house, a 200,000, I'm sorry, a $300,000 house at a $200,000 discount. Let's do it one more time. And then we combine all of our income with the the two tenants' income, and now that second rental house gets paid off in 3.3 years, right? 3.3 years, mind blown. And so, actually, let me record this, okay? So the first house, let me go back. What did I do here? So let's just do $10,000 chunks. Don't make it a nice clean number. Equals plus $2,000 times zero point 0.7, right? So the first rental property gets paid off in 4.6 years. 4.6 years, right? That's rental property one. Now let's get the next property. And again, one of the reasons why we buy it at a discount is because the rental property will always pay off with a lower purchase price, even though it's a higher interest rate. I would definitely always take a lower purchase price with a higher interest rate than a higher purchase price and a lower interest rate. Always, always, given the same payment. Now let's go ahead and pay this one off. 3.3 years. So the next house will pay off in 3.3 years. And then let's just get three houses, right? Three rental houses. Let's pay it off. And then bam. So how long is the next one going to take? 2.6, right? And so now let's go ahead and calculate how long this all took. So this is like 4.6 plus 3.3 plus 2.6, right? And now it took us about 10 years to have a portfolio of three fully paid off houses. Now, I don't know about you. Some people brag, I got 20 doors, but I don't want to deal with 20 tenants. I have three houses with probably $1 million of equity. If I get sick of being a landlord, then I'll just sell them off one at a time, right? Or you ever see like on like LoopNet about like landlords trying to sell 20 properties at once? Good luck finding a buyer for those. But let me just kind of go to now our loan amortization sheet. So give me 1 second. Um, Let me go back. Is it this one? Yeah. All right. Let's go back here, and then so remember when we're kind of doing the investment portfolio, we're at month 19, right? So now where are we at right now? It's about 10 point, where do we go? 10.5 years. So let's figure out how many months have passed. So 10.5 times 12, I think. So that would be 126 months. Okay. So now let's do this equals 19 plus 126. So now that's the current balance of that mortgage, right? And we just do the same thing with the chunking. Or yeah, right. So let's go ahead and put that in and figure out. All right. Well, now let's focus on my rental property. I'm sorry, not my personal home, and pay that off. And so let's go ahead and fill in those numbers, right? And then we're going to go ahead and do that. And let me go back here. So now I've got three fully paid off rental properties, and I'm good. And so I don't want to deal with, I'm okay now. Just let's focus on paying off my house. So let's say the home loan was about $200,000, and it was actually a 4% interest rate. And then what is the current balance of that? So the current balance of that is 146,387.03. 146,387.03. And then the payment amount is 954.83. 954.83. Okay. And then let's just do $20,000 chunks because now we have more income. And then, so now what we're going to do is we're going to decrease our expenses because the when we do our expenses, it's everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off. But now because we're trying to pay off this loan, so we just take that out of the expense equation. So now it would just be 2,100. Okay. And how long does it take? 1.6 years. Whew, that's pretty sweet. That's a spicy meatball, right? 1.6 years to pay off my mortgage, and it's just like, whoa, it's a mind blown, right? So this is mind blowing, right? So again, um, I don't know about you, but how like Ooh, I paid off my mortgage in 3 years, but again, you create that snowball effect with all that income, and then you're like, oh, thinking, the average American's thinking about refinancing, and I'm looking at 1.6 years because I got three paid off houses. Like, are you insane? And now, like, let's take a look at our real cash flow number, right? So scroll down here. It's about $8,000 a month, and now we got what we call rich people problems, right? So, rich people problems, and now we're afraid that our money, because we got the 8,000 a month coming into our savings account, you're thinking like, am I going to lose it in inflation? Right? So now it's maybe time to I don't know, just get more houses and be greedy, right? At least your wife or your girlfriend or your significant other isn't going to laugh at you for having that itty bitty small cash flow anymore, and ask yourself, why is it so small? Because we didn't know velocity banking before we got into rental properties, right? We didn't. And that's the power of this strategy. It's so simple that you don't. It's basic math, like a minus b divided by something. I don't know. All right, well, that's it for today. So it's Saturday. So if you're watching Velocity Banking on a Saturday, congrats to you, because most people, they're probably either Netflixing, chilling, or maybe at the club Saturday night, right? People don't want to learn about this. Spend $200 at the open bar and then wondering like, where'd all my money go? You know what I mean? All right. Well, that's it for today. Have a great night, and we'll speak next time.